to better align with the updated timeline and fully fund Caldwell Park project. The funding moved from the other bond projects will be included in the next bond sale as needed. That's Academy Recreation Center, Poplar Tent Trailhead Park, and WW Flow Park. On Thursday, we will provide during the bond departmental report updated financial information for all the bond projects and a new timeline for council to review. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, questions? Anything? Go JC.
Sheila, and there's numbers everywhere. Back in August of 21, February of 22, when we kind of set the bond referendum parks, the number I have for Caldwell Park total, and I'm gonna round up, about 6.5 million, with about 5.5 million coming from our bond, our $60 million bond. How did we get to 11?
It was around 7 million and that included the $1 million in grants.
Mm-hmm.
So you add the grants to it, it's right at 7 million, give or take. I updated council on a new projection as we move through. This project actually started design in late 2019, so it's a little over 4.5 years to come to this point where we are now. The updated amount that was provided to council for the first, during the project update meetings, put the project at 11.5.
I missed that.
And then from 11.5, today we're at $2 million over that original projection.
So do you know how much of this is being funded out of the 60? What is the funding from the bond?
For total
Proceeds.
for this project, I'm gonna look at Jessica, it's 10 million?
Yeah, 10 and a half.
10.5 million?
Originally 7.
Correct.
Well, no, it was originally 5.4. That's the number we had that adds up to 60 million. So no matter what our estimates have done, so it's doubled. This has doubled since we went to the voters. Okay.
Is there a way we could, because I'm looking at this budget amendment too, because I think the big question is the reallocation. I don't even know how I'm trying to say this. The reality is we promised the voters a package and it's 60 million and we promised to touch all the parks, right? So I think the challenge is we're going to have to make a decision as a council. Do we continue? Because by the time we get to Ramsor Park, I mean, there's not going to be any money left, right? And so we've got to decide what the priorities are, right? Is there a way that we maybe at the second work session could get a matrix of the numbers or something like that? Because I do know that we've had the updates and we've had the original, and I agree. I lost the 11.6 somewhere, and I'm not as detailed on the numbers as JC is, but
Yeah,
can
that's a
we
great
get
idea.
the original projection and then the reallocate? Like, could we get all that, Jessica, maybe in some form, all of it together?
Yeah,
And then that way we could
no
kind of
problem.
talk
We'll be
through.
glad to. And
Our
I think
original numbers and where they were going, the new contract numbers, and how it's being funded, and the new estimates, so we have everything on one.
on Thursday, you guys will receive updated estimates with the bond, the 60 million, including all the details. That will be a slide provided to you on Thursday.
And that'll have
Showing
all
that-
the original numbers.
No, it does not have the.
And that's what we need. If we could
I'll
get
have to
that,
get
Yeah.
we could get
And
that.
it doesn't
maybe.
have to be Thursday, right?
No.
I'm thinking
But
like,
no, the numbers on Thursday are updated based on current estimates and the confirmed bids we have.
Okay.
So,
to the $60 million that we borrowed.
and so I think that'll help too, to see everything updated compared to what our funding source is, because we have the 60 million, but we also have the premium from the bond sale as well as investment earnings on top of it.
Right.
So I've got that whole picture for you
Okay.
on Thursday.
If
That
we
sounds
could,
great.
if we could get that a few days before the next second work session, and then have just a good in-depth on where we are.
Yeah.
I think that'd be very
I've
helpful.
got most of it right here, except for the original numbers, so Sheila and I can work
Okay.
together on that. And
That would
get
be great. That way we could see the picture of where we're at in the whole,
Yep.
you know, because I know that Dorton changed. And so the impact, again, this goes back to the sewer thing, right? We're looking at these as individuals, but what we need to look at as a council is how is it impacting this bucket totally? Because we don't want to be able to be in a decision that we can't make a decision because we're so far down the road that we can't have an impact on a park. So, okay, awesome. Thank you.
Bill, I do have a specific, not a money question. 6, 7 months ago, we approved your final plan. Does this basically provide what we voted on those 6, 7, 8 months ago?
100%,
100%.
no extra. Can't, no extra. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Item 3, consider a final design for new David Phillips Park on Burge Road.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Call on George to come forward. He's going to introduce our consultant to go through this final project and what it looks like. So George, if you would.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, Mr. Payne, Ms. Kolchinsky, Ms. Thiessen. I'd like to introduce, as the city manager said, the final design for the Burridge Road Park, which is named for David Phillips and David Phillips Park with the David Phillips Activity Center. And just to remind the council, the master plan, which was adopted by council in September of 2020, is on the screen in front of you on the left. And the final design, which you'll see in a larger picture, is on the right. There have only been 2 changes. They're minor changes from the master plan to the final design. Those center on the 3 Mile Branch Creek. We were going to put we're thinking about putting in a beach area in there and a creek overlook. Both of those looked like they were going to have permitting issues attached to them, so we've removed those specifically because there's going to be a number of other locations where the public can get access to the creek either by using existing trails that are there or walking along trails that they can look over the creek and that sort of thing. And also I wanted to make sure that I could remind the council that we did have a well-attended public input meeting on September 29th, and thank you to a number of the council members who came to that meeting. And now I'd like to introduce Nick Lowe with McAdams, who's been the design consultant on this project throughout, and he will go through the project itself. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. So we'll take a tour of the site so you can see in depth some more vivid pictures of what things will actually look like. So if you could see our site plan here, I'll start our tour of the park up at the existing activity center, then we'll move down the hill to the existing shelter and restroom, and then back across the site to the east towards where the treehouse is sitting on top of the hill. So a first look, zoom in coming down from the activity center, you can see a lot of these plantings. And the reason why we showed this image is you can see the ADA pathway zigzagging down the hill that ends in the existing shelter. So the intent of this is a teaching area, and that's the intent of the whole site. Tying everything together is learning, nature learning, putting people in touch with the environment and just giving them full access to these different environments we're creating. So starting at the top, it zigzags down to some plots. So these plots are intended to show people what they can grow across the season, but integrated within that are some permaculture, so things that can be grown at home, spices, herbs, even some fruit trees. So that's one other thing that has changed from the original plan, is we moved some fruiting trees over into this area because it goes with what we're trying to teach over here. So some of those smaller trees are dwarf versions of an orchard. So also, if you can see to the right of the ADA trail, there's a stormwater management device. And so this device is intended to become more of a natural system. So we're using this also to create habitat for things that would grow in more of a wetland environment. So stepping down the hill into the wetland area. I'll show some closer pictures. You can see right adjacent to the existing shelter, there's a playground area as well as some other teaching areas. And that's the intent, is to create these smaller pockets of learning and to engage people with the environment around them. So zooming right into the playground, the intent with the playground was more of a naturalistic playground to kind of meet that feel of the whole park. So nature learning, so there's a lot of wood elements. And one thing to key into here is if you see the 4 boxes, these are 4 tree houses. So the idea that they're tree houses that the kids that lived there could have played, and calling back to those 4 brothers, that was one of the things that a lot of people at the engagement really honed in on, is they remembered playing on these site with those 4 brothers. So this playground really talks to the history of what was there. And if you can see the bottom right-hand corner, we do have a hillside slide that further engages people into that hill in another form of play. And this playground is inclusive with points where people can transfer over and go up and down. A closer image, you can see 3 of those 4 tree houses that resemble the 4 brothers. But within that, we're embedding that nature learning. There's also some things within here that people can do a search and find of what could actually be on the site and some of the species that we're attracting here. So again, trying to engage the user with the natural surroundings, but also trying to cultivate a landscape that attracts these things back to the site. And just another view of the slide, and you can see the hillside slide there. So this would be moving east across the site closer to the Greenway connection. So there was an idea of an aviary. So this aviary is kind of an inverted aviary. So we're not closing the species or the insects or the birds in, but we're allowing them to fly into where we are and trying to provide plantings and things around so that the students on site can engage, but also create smaller pockets. That's a very versatile learning area. So if you see a bird over here, you can move the class there, or you see any insect you want to talk about or a plant you want to talk about, you move to the other side. So trying to create these versatile spaces where you can engage. So this is up at the top of the hill, furthest east of the site. So this is an overlooked treehouse. And so the intent here is to provide smaller spaces where you can teach kids. So these little outlooks where you can go and point out into the forest what's going on. But one unique aspect of this is creating access for everyone to every part of the site. There's a ramp and little small amphitheater area. So if you wanted to sit on the wall and teach, or kids could sit on the steps and teach, there's just all these opportunities to create smaller learning areas. One unique thing with the treehouse is we wanted it to resemble actually trees in that form of a tree. So you can see the canopy there really resembles the trees around it, but that structure and that branching. So really trying to create spaces that integrate into the natural area. One other note, you can kind of see how these things tie together, is from the community engagement, we really heard that people like the idea, if you can see that swath of forest we're keeping up next to Barrage Road, of you're keeping this site as intact as possible. This is one of the things that the people around really loved, was the fact that there's this forest and it contains all these things that are happening. So just an overview of how everything connects together. Any questions?
Questions?
I was able to go to the presentation they did, and Dave Phillips was there. And I think Dave may be here Thursday to say that he likes what they have planned. And that was important to me to hear.
All right, other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Now we move on to item number 4, which is H from the consent agenda. And H is consider adopting a resolution authorizing eminent domain.
Yes, this is a request for a resolution authorizing an eminent domain process at 620 Main Street. The property is currently titled in the heirs of Michael Helms. Mr. Helms passed away out of state. No estate has ever been filed for Mr. Helms. We are unaware of any actual existing heirs. The reason for the condemnation request is the stormwater culvert under Main Street needs to be replaced. We are asking for a temporary construction easement of 0.18 acres, a permanent easement of 0.024 acres, for a total compensation of $1,641.60.
Where does that money go if nobody
I was
knows?
gonna ask.
The money will escheat to the state.
Just wait.
And if any errors ever show up, and we will post a sign on this property, that we do that when we have properties that are unknown owners, because sometimes putting a very large sign on the property will bring people out and they'll go like, hey, I have an interest in that. And then we actually have a human being to work with, which is kind of nice. So, yeah, the money, we have to make the deposit to the court, and when nobody comes to claim the deposit, and in this case, there may be taxes on this, I actually don't know off the top of my head, there probably are. So some of it will go to the county for taxes, and whatever's left over will go to the state and be held in an account.
Okay.
Do you know how big the total parcel is?
It's not terribly big. I don't have it right off the top of my head, but there's a sewer, there is a sewer easement that bisects the property. We actually sent it out to every department and Josh to see if there was any interest in condemning the entire parcel, and there was none. It's not suitable for really building anything on it.
Anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Item 5, consider adopting a project ordinance amending increase of home programming income.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Call on Mary, who oversees our home funds and home program for the city, to go through this item with council.
Thank you. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Payne, Ms. Kolchinsky, the item is the correction of the home budget for fiscal year 24. And it is the correction that is due to the actual program income that came into the city versus the budgeted program income. We never know how much program income we're going to get until we actually receive that program income, and so this is simply the correction that is done at the end of the year. There is a typo in the recommendation that staff did note, and we obviously didn't get it changed in time. It should be $142,520, not $14,520, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any question from council?
Mary, why earmark it for the Coleman Mill? I thought that project was just done.
So with our home funds, we have timing that's set from HUD. Whenever we receive program income, we have to spend it the next fiscal year. So Coleman Mill funding was actually earmarked a few years back. Since that closing has migrated, we'll say, and we've not pulled those funds yet, we've had to pull those funds for other projects. And so when we receive new program income, we simply put it back in the pot. So it's basically refilling what we've had to spend so that we don't get in trouble with HUD.
Yeah, we're not adding any additional funding to the
No,
Coleman
sir.
Mill project. We're just making sure the money in there can actively be used for that. And because if not, it expires. If we just set that Coleman Mill money aside from home funds and never touch it, then it will expire. When it comes time to use it, we won't have it. So we have to continue to almost replenish or replace it, but the amount still remains the same.
And HUD requires us to use our program income before we can use our entitlement funds or our actual allocation. So if we have program income and we have to use our entitlement funds due to timing, because we only have 8 years to use our home funds, we have to spend those program income funds before we can use those entitlement funds. So it ends up being, as we affectionately refer to it, our nut shuffle. So we have to shuffle our money around and shuffle our stuff around, and we make sure that we have our money there for Coleman Mill.
Okay. Any more questions? Well, yeah.
It's fun.
It's been. All right. Thank you, Mary. Okay, next, we're going to have a motion to go into closed session. Move that we go into closed session pursuant to NC General Statute 143-318-11A4 in order to discuss the location or expansion of industries or other business in the area served by this public body. Is there a motion? All in favor, raise your hand. Thank you very much. Anybody opposed? Anybody opposed? We are in closed session. Thank you.